Okay, good morning. Welcome to the section on job costing. So what is job costing about? We've spoken about it in previous sections. If we think of the cost object and tracing direct costs and allocating indirect costs to that cost object, we need systems for doing that. And we have two broad categories of systems. Systems where we produce once-off unique products and we need to know exactly what each cost object produces, and then systems for where we mass produce products. And those would be the process costing and standard costing, which we'll be looking at in later sections. Today, we're going to look at specifically job costing. So in job costing, what we want to do is we want to trace the costs to each and every cost object. So we'll still have our overall work in progress account. We call this the master control account or something along those lines. But in addition to the master control account, we will have what we refer to as a subsidiary ledger, where we'll have a variety of mini work in progress accounts, where we'll keep track of the costs for each and every product or service that we make. So if you take your car to an auto mechanic, they will create a job card for the work they're going to do on your motor vehicle, and they will trace the exact costs to your car repair, which will be the parts, the materials they used, the labor time, and then obviously overhead allocation. So what we're going to do now is we'll just have a look at the class example in the notes, and then after that we will move on and we will look at the additional examples in the pack of notes that you would have got before the spring break. So we will have a look here at the class example. Okay, so in this example, it is a combination of both overhead allocation, which we would have looked at, and job costing. So for now, we're not going to focus on the overhead allocation portion because that's been done. We're just going to look at job costing component. But before we can do that, we do need to know what the overhead allocation rate is. So if we go look at the information in this example, there's $280,000 worth of costs, and we have an estimated 14,000 hours of testing time. Now in this case, overheads are getting allocated on the basis of testing time, not on labor time, and they could be slightly different. The other bits of information we need to take note of is the specific costs, which is $800 in materials for this job. So that's $800 in materials, and then we have 20 hours of labor at $10 an hour, and then obviously our overhead, we have in this case 5 hours of testing time. Let me double check that. Yes, 5 hours of testing time. Okay, so let us close this. Okay, so I kept track of certain information in this particular case. We're looking at one mini job. Just looking at that mini job, we already noted that material is $800. There's 20 hours of labor at $10 an hour. That's $200. And then with respect to the overhead, we said we need to look at the predetermined rate for testing. The budgeted overhead was $280,000, 14,000 testing hours. That gives us $20 an hour. So we got 5 hours of testing at $20 an hour, which gives us $100. So we add it all up, we're going to end up with a total of $1,100 for this specific job. In this particular case, we didn't have enough information for the overall picture. We just had information for this specific job. Right, so now we're going to go and shift and have a look at an additional example. I'm going to go to the screen saving, sharing section, and we will look at the example from your notes. This is an additional example that came from the textbook. There's quite a lot of information here, and I'm going to be writing it down on the screen while you are reading this example, and we're going to try to keep track of it all. So in this particular case, they know the total materials purchased is 192,000. So that's going to go into the materials account. we know that 158,000 have been allocated out. That 158,000 will consist of some direct amounts, which are going to go to the work in progress, and the indirect amounts, which is for general factory use, it's just cleaning materials, which is 4.47. That 4.47 is going to end up having to go to our overhead account. So that's 4.47, and that's for materials. So we've dealt with materials. Obviously, 192 minus 158, there will be a closing balance left behind. I'm not going to worry about that right now. Okay, next information is factory wages, our total of 87.3. So our actual on our plus side of our labor account is going to be 87.3. And they have given us a split, and we can see here everything except for 7.3. So 7.3 is indirect, and the rest, which is 80,000, will be direct. So the direct amount is going to go to our work in progress account, our labor. The 7.3 is going to go to our overhead account. Okay. We may as well, while we're here, work out the total of the materials cost. So we had 158,000 being split out, of which 4.47 was indirect, which means 100. Material is 153.53. Finally, we're going to get to overhead. So there's additional information here about other overheads other than materials and labor. We have manufacturing costs of 39.5. We have depreciation of 14.55. We can add that all up and get a grand total. The grand total of our overheads, including our indirect materials and our indirect labor, plus the 39.5 plus the 14.55 will give us 65.82. Let's go and focus at how much is going to get allocated out. So in terms of the amount that get allocated out, we have got 80% based on direct labor cost. If we look at our labor costs, we have 80,000. So if we have got 80% times 80,000, that's going to give us overhead as 64,000. So 64,000 would be allocated out. And if we had to go and look over here and at our overhead account, we had actual of 65.82 and 64 allocated out, which means we have under applied of 1.82, 1,820. Right, finally, we're going to go and hone in on some mini work in progress accounts. And those mini work in progress accounts, we need obviously more specific information. So for the mini work in progress accounts, let's just have a look if we can make this a bit bigger. Yep, we can. Might just move that so it doesn't get in the way. There. So for the mini work in progress accounts, let's go and pick an example. We can clear out the previous example I have here in one mini work in progress account. Let's pick two. I'm specifically going to go and pick A22. I could do maybe A20 and A22. Why do I want A22? And we can do all four of them. I want A22 because it's the only one that hasn't been completed. So when we look at our closing work in progress, the closing balance in that is going to be A22. So we need to know the value. And the rest will be transferred out to finished goods, which is A20, A21, and A23. Right, so let's go and look at A20. So the materials for A20 is 35.24. Yep, under there. Labor is 18. Badly drawn 18. And then our overhead. What will that be? 80% of the 18. So if we take 80% of the 18, we get 14.40. That total is obviously going to get transferred to finished goods because it has been completed. We can do the same thing again now for A22. Materials is given to us as 36 0.1. The labor is given to us as 15. Therefore, the overhead we can work out as 80% of the 15, which I think gives us 12. Add it all up. 64.1. That balance is not getting transferred out. That is the closing balance. And in our master work in progress account or control work in progress account, that will be our closing balance. Okay, obviously we can go and balance out our labor, which will balance out. Materials is a closing balance. The overhead account, the difference will go to the cost of goods sold as under applied. And in our master work in progress account or control account, we will have the balance or the cost of the 3 jobs, A20, A21, and 23, going to finished goods. And the closing balance will be the value that is sitting in the mini work in progress account for A22. So there we go. We have an example of job costing with a fair amount of detail, which should prepare you for the quiz example that we will have next. And we will end at that point.